Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's virtual public meeting on fare verification. My name is Lindsay Heffernan, and I'm the Acting Assistant General Manager for Policy at the T, and I'll be both presenting and moderating tonight's meeting. First, I'd like to let you know we do have a presentation to share, and then we will be taking public comment at the end of the presentation. Second, I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting is being audio and visually recorded and will be made publicly available following this meeting. But before we get started, I'd like to go over a couple features of the Zoom platform and meeting controls for those who may not be familiar. First, we have live Spanish language interpretation at today's meeting. I'll explain how to select your preferred language in English now, and written instructions are provided on the screen in Spanish. In your meeting and webinar controls at the bottom of your screen, please click Interpretation. Then click the language you would like to hear. We'd ask that even participants listening in English should select English so that you can hear any comments being spoken in other languages during the comment period. This meeting also includes ASL interpreters. I'd like to thank both Sharon Mendez and Linda Gregorio for being with us this evening. The meeting host has spotlighted the interpreters to ensure that they can be seen at all times. You can expect the ASL interpreters to switch approximately every 15 minutes. If at any point in time you cannot see the interpreter, please let the tech support know through the chat. We also have closed captions for this meeting. If you do not see the captions, please press the closed caption button at the bottom of your screen in order to get them started. And lastly, if at any point during the meeting you have any technical questions about Zoom or the accessibility features of tonight's meeting, please chat tech support. Tech support should be up at the top of the list in the chat feature. We'll work to troubleshoot any problems that you may have. Okay, on tonight's call, I'd like to welcome those who are part of the MBTA team here to turn their cameras on and introduce themselves. As I said, I am the Acting Assistant General Manager for Policy, Lindsay Heffernan. I'm glad you're with us tonight. Why don't we just go through in the order they're on the screen.
Hi folks, I'm Nilay Vasavda. I'm the technical lead for policy implementation.
Hello, I'm Laura Fermin. I am the Fare Verification Design Coordinator. I'm happy to be here.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Anthony Thomas. I'm the Manager of Policy Development and Outreach.
He's also subbing as our tech support this evening. So if you have any issues, Anthony will be behind the scenes trying to assist. Thank you all for being here this evening. So I want to just cover our agenda for tonight. First, we're going to try to cover some background. What are we doing and why are we doing it? What are we trying to achieve? How we hope the fare verification system will work. Some upcoming decisions and considerations, and then we'll open it up for your comments and feedback. So some background. One of the very important goals that we have in the fare transformation project is to move our system to all door boarding. We believe, and we think the research has shown out that will lead to faster and more reliable service. So currently, what you have on the left side of your screen should be how our system works today. If you particularly think about this as a bus or a green line car, you have to have a Charlie card or a way to pay available to you before you get on the bus. You can't pay while you're waiting. You're just there waiting, hopefully not in the rain, under a bus shelter. And then when you get on the bus, many people, everyone has to engage with the fare box, and many people are going to pay or reload once they are on board. So that means sometimes the crumpled up dollar bills, we're trying to put those on the bus as they're getting on. So front door boarding only, we believe leads to longer lines, more time at every stop. That increases our trip length variability, and that we know that everybody is waiting for various riders to pay. In the future, what we want to move to is a system where everyone has fare media and they are readily available throughout our entire service network, that there are many more places to reload and add value to your Charlie card or Charlie count before you board. And those can be via phone, a website, Charlie card store, fare vending machines, and that all of the doors of our buses and our green lines have readers for folks to tap as they board. Our belief is that by moving to this system, we will resort in shorter lines, quicker stops, up to 10% faster trips, and ultimately an improved customer service. We know one of the most important thing for individuals who are riding, particularly our bus network, is a reliable bus service. That's what they're seeking, and that's what we believe we're delivering through this system. So the things that we are doing to get to this place, which is a big change for us as both for riders, but also for the MBTA, we are installing readers at all the doors on the buses and Green Line. We are developing strategies and initiatives to expand access to fare media across the transit network. Some of your names are familiar, so you may have joined us for previous meetings about our sales network, and we have lots of information online about how we're trying to expand our overall sales network and support particularly folks who are currently paying in cash. We are also implementing a proof of payment program to encourage and ensure fair compliance, and that's really what tonight is about. And then we are trying to make it easier, as I said, for folks to load Charlie cards, to get Charlie cards and to load Charlie cards through an expanded cash network, sales network, and also additional sales channels. And so whether it be that through retailers or the like. So when we, to get to all door boarding and that fast and reliable service, what you'll see when you board a bus, Green Line or Mattapan trolley are these readers at all of the doors. We believe that all door boarding will get to that, will get to faster boarding and more reliable service, but we do know that there are two outcomes of that. One, our operators are no longer involved in fare collection. It will no longer be their responsibility, and that's a big shift internally to ensure that people are paying their fare. That will be shifting over to a predominantly civilian workforce. And that we are cognizant that opening up all the doors and having the operator not there to ask for your fare as you board, that we are increasing the risk of fare evasion. And so to mitigate that risk, we are implementing a proof of payment system, something that is common across much of Europe and some of our other transit partners in other parts of the United States as well. So why are we moving to verification? The biggest return on having a fare verification team or the civilian workforce to check and ensure that people have paid their fare is deterrence. Our goal is not to get to a one-to-one recovery for lost fares through tickets. That is not the intention. However, we believe that seeing other individuals being inspected yourself periodically is going to essentially keep people honest and make sure that they voluntarily are paying their fare. So like other transit agencies, you might say, how big of a problem is this? We know that we lose revenue on fare evasion today. In the middle of your screen, you'll see some of our estimates. In 2016, the Central Transportation Planning Staff, CTPS, estimated fare evasion rates at roughly 5 to 10% for surface Green Line rear door boarding when that's allowed. And so if you've ridden the Green Line, at times the rear doors will open to ease boarding. And so we know that fare evasion is higher when people are boarding at the rear door and there isn't a fare box. We estimate about 1% on all other rapid transit. And so mostly those gates do work to make sure most people are paying their fares, and about 1% on all other bus when individuals are only boarding through the front door. All total, the loss of between $5 and $6 million per year on those modes. In the future, we will have the fare transformation program is really designed to have one payment system for all of our system, for all modes. And so I want to talk about commuter rail for a minute. In 2019, the MBTA's lost revenue on commuter rail, we estimated between $10 and $20 million. And so this will cover tonight a little more about what's going to happen on the commuter rail system as well. Moving to all-door boarding without fare verification, we believe could lead to quite a large increase in fare evasion. So our partners in San Francisco MTA, who had a fare verification system, estimated that system-wide evasion rates were as high as 7.9% in 2014. We also know from published research that when there is a breakdown in the norms of paying your fare, and it is not the presumption that everyone pays, evasion rates can get as high as 28%, as we saw with our partners in Santiago de Chile. So potentially evasion rates could go up pretty dramatically. So how will fare verification work on the T? First and foremost, you'll be able to tap everywhere. You'll see those readers in all sorts of different places. On the subway, individuals will be able to tap at the gate. The gates provide the predominant, a really important piece of our fare verification system, and then you'd be able to go about your ride. On the bus and green line, you would tap at any door. Board at any door, tap at the readers as you get on, take your trip, and the fare verification team would be there to ensure that individuals are tapping as appropriate. The commuter rail is a little different because the commuter rail, we, of course, I'm sure many of you are familiar, we have a zone system for payment. So it's a distance base, how far you travel matters. So individuals would tap on at either the terminal gates or at the platform. They would then ride. Fare verification would be conducted by our conductors, currently through Keolis, and then you'd be tapping again when you get off. And so 2 taps are necessary to know how far you've traveled and make sure that you are then paying the proper fare. So what does fare verification really look like? MBTA personnel would be equipped with a handheld device. You can see one of those here. That can verify in real time if a rider has paid the correct fare for the service that they are on. If a rider did not pay the proper amount, they would be issued a civil citation. Riders would be able to appeal, certainly, and MBTA would be able to review data and provide hearings. Important to note, these handheld devices, larger than your average cell phone, they actually include a small printer in them. So the citations are actually printed at the time of that interaction. So MBTA personnel will be required to check all riders on a vehicle in order to reduce discretion and any concerns around bias. The goal here is to have an efficient and equitable fare verification process with data collected and released to ensure public accountability in how this process rolls out in the greater Boston area. So our civilian staff, we had a change in legislation through the Transportation Bond Bill in January of this year that ensured that fare verification could be conducted by civilian staff. We are estimating that approximately 80 individuals would be required for this role. The transit police will still be able statutorily to issue citations if they see somebody evade fare, but on a per mile basis, when you think about particularly our bus network and the commuter rail network, the responsibility of enforcement will shift largely to both new workforce and our Keolis partners. MBTA fare verification staff, particularly on the bus and green line, where we'll spend a little more time talking tonight, will work in pairs for their safety. When fare transformation rolls out to commuter and regional rails, as I said, conductors and ferry operators will also be able to verify fares. So just a little bit more about the inspection design. The fare verification staff will all carry these handheld readers. Riders will be asked to tap, and so riders could have a card, they could have a phone, and that they are going to tap whatever fare media they had onto this device. The device then in real time is going to connect to our back office to determine when and where the rider tapped and ensure that they are currently on a mode for which they have paid. The device also can tell if any of the fare system hardware is malfunctioning within our system, which may have led to someone being unable to pay. For instance, if a fare vending machine was malfunctioning at the bus stop that you were trying to reload at, the system will all be incorporated. Riders will be issued one warning before being issued a citation. We certainly are concerned and being thoughtful about how do we help educate our riders about this new system. And the MBTA staff are very much committed to educating our riders on fare verification before implementing it and implementing the system in 2023. If you have comments and thoughts for us about how we can help educate our riders, please save those for the public comment period where we're open to ideas. So what is verification going to look like on the Green Line bus and Mattapan trolley? Riders will tap before they board or as they board a vehicle. On the Mattapan trolley, there'll be platform validators, depending on their service. Two fare verification staff will board a vehicle. Our current thinking is they'll board one through each door. And then all riders at that point in time will be asked to present their proof of payment. The two staff will work their way towards the center of the vehicle, verifying payment for everybody on board. Everybody will be checked on that vehicle to reduce bias and selective enforcement. And then those staff will be able to issue warnings or citations for individuals who have not paid prior to boarding. Verification on the red, orange, and blue lines. In all gated stations, fare verification is predominantly enforced by the physical fare gates themselves. Staff will periodically make checks in these stations. As I said, transit police will continue to be an important part of our enforcement system, and where they witness fare evasion, they are able to either issue a warning or citation, again with the same device. Staff then can issue those warnings for those who haven't paid using that handheld reader. On the commuter rail, and we hope soon to be regional rail system, riders will tap before boarding, either at the fare gates at the downtown terminals or at the validators on the platforms. Conductors will move through the train cars after trains depart stations, just as they do now, and all riders will be asked to present their proof of payment. Every rider will be checked on the train, again, to reduce any bias, and conductors will be able to issue warnings or citations for those who haven't paid before boarding. The ferry is a little unique. Ferry staff currently check payment at the time of boarding, and so staff have to be present at boarding to ensure capacity limits aren't breached, which I think are part of Coast Guard regulations. All riders will be asked to present their payment at the time of boarding, and the handheld readers can actually be set to a verification mode to ease boarding, and so they'll be verifying payment as people board the ferry. So some upcoming decisions and considerations, things that we are thinking about where we'd love some feedback and some input. One important one is in the area of training. We are very much committed to ensuring that this process is done in a fair and equitable and respectful manner. And so we want to make sure that our first responsibility is customer service for this staff, and we understand this is a huge transition for everyone. We are thinking deeply about training and what kinds of training we should be providing to our new staff. We've been thinking about customer service training, de-escalation and implicit bias training, and also safety awareness training. These are new staff on our system, and certainly part of their work would be to ensure that everything is running safely. We're also thinking about efficient and equitable routing. So in the coming months, the MBTA staff is beginning a process to determine how do you think about equitable routing for fare verification to ensure that all riders have a similar rates of verification, whether they're traveling on a very busy route or traveling on one of our less busy, potentially bus routes. Riders are not likely to have their fare media inspected on every trip. We are instead trying to ensure equity in how we deploy our staff. So what we don't want to do is just go to the busy stations. We go to the busy stations, Those often tend to be more likely to be low income and or minority riders or people of color riding our system. And we don't want to ignore our outlying bus routes. And so we are thinking deeply about how to best do that. And our system is unique. So you have to have an understanding of our system and then figure out how do you send a fare verification team out onto a less busy route, but how do you make sure that that is an efficient use of time and resources? We're also thinking a lot about quality control. We have built into our plan a quality control analyst to monitor the actions of the fare verification team, to make adjustments in schedule, to ensure any additional training is needed, to deal with any complaints that may come up and ensure we have a high quality user experience. We want to make sure that we have people that are staffed to respond to any issues that come up both in real time, but also in short order and address any issues. We're also committed to transparency in this process. Our current system is a very paper-heavy system. We are moving to a system with significantly more back-end technology, and so we can respond to requests for information. Moreover, the transportation bond bill included language requiring the MBTA to submit an annual report on both warnings and citations to the legislature. In the future, we'll be able to report out on the aggregate, of course, not with anyone's personal identifying information about who received citations, when and where they received citations, how many were issued, is it equal across all of our staff, whether they were appealed, whether appeals were denied. We'll have a whole bunch of data that we can provide to people when needed. Riders will, of course, maintain their ability to appeal their citations if they believe they were wrongfully cited, and the MBTA will be able to offer alternative ways of accepting payment for those who can't afford to pay their fine. The MBTA, we're certainly learning from our transit agency peers about how to incorporate reduced fare programs, and enrolling people into reduced fare programs is one way to resolve an appeal, or potentially performing community service in lieu of payment. So some of the things we're looking ahead at and things we would love to hear more from all of you. And we again thank you for joining us tonight. Does our staffing model make sense? Does it make sense by mode? How should we help the riding public understand these changes? How do we help train up 1.3 million trips a day? Can additional training help with reducing bias and enforcement? Are there other alternatives that we should be considering? Other concerns about impacts to low-income riders or communities where people maybe English is not the first language. So these are all concerns that we're wrestling with, and we would love to hear from all of you. So at this point in time, what I'd like to do is transition to the comment period. So let me cover a couple of things to make sure everyone knows how they can share comments with us. You can certainly submit comments in the chat pod. In doing so, we will try to move through those as quickly as we can. To make a comment aloud, you must virtually raise your hand. I see one raised hand. I'll get to you in just a second. It looks like Representative Owens. To do this on the computer, you're either going to hit the Alt and Y key at the same time, or click the reactions button at the bottom of your screen and then select raised hand. On a mobile device, you're going to tap the raise hand button at the bottom center of your screen. And on the phone, you're going to dial *9. Once you raise your hand, you'll be added to the queue. And I'll call on folks in a first come, first serve basis. I'll either say your last name or the last 4 digits of your phone number when I get to you, and I'll let you know I'm unmuting you. If you're on a computer or mobile device, a box will pop up in the center of your screen and you'll have to confirm that you want to be unmuted before you begin speaking. If you're on the phone, an automated recording will let you know that you are unmuted, and you may begin to speak as soon as the recording finishes. Once you're unmuted, everyone in the meeting can hear you, and your comments are on the public record. Before making your comment, I'd ask you to please slowly state your name and if you have any organizational affiliation. Please remember to speak slowly, as we have multiple interpreters working with us this evening. And I'd ideally ask you to limit your comments to 2 minutes, though we don't have so many people here that we can't take your comments this evening. I'm sure we'll have plenty of time. As soon as you are finished, you will be muted again. So with that, I see some comments coming in on the chat. I thank you for those. And I'm also going to unmute. It looks like we have Representative Stephen Owens here. You should be able to unmute, sir.
Hi, Lindsay, thank you so
Yes,
much.
we can hear you.
Great. I appreciate all the work that you've done. This has been a very helpful and informative presentation. And just, you did say to introduce yourself, Representative Steve Owens. I am from Watertown. I had kind of one question and then one comment, not from the presentation, but something I read on your fact sheet. One question I had is that if I'm using this on my phone as my payment, I'm supposed to tap my phone against somebody else's device and have it read that? That's what I'm led to believe?
Yeah, so there's a
Okay.
couple of interesting things that happen with your phone. So you can use your phone in 2 different ways. Representative, let's see if I can clarify, because I'm still making sure I'm getting all this technology right. And if another screen wants to turn itself on and make sure I don't get this wrong, please feel free. Neely. So your phone has the ability to function essentially as a credit card, and you can put a credit card on your phone, and you can always use a contactless credit card on our system, or you can use your phone like a credit card. And so you would then tap on to a reader, and you do that same sort of tap onto one of those handheld devices. Your phone also, though, can, if you are potentially unbanked or don't have a credit card, you can put your Charlie card, your sort of virtual Charlie card, onto your phone into either your Apple Wallet or your Google Wallet. There we go. There's the other provider. And then that Charlie card is sort of living on your wallet. And then when you tap, it's going through that system. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes
Okay.
sense. It's I understand the process. It just is
Okay.
a little maybe I'm old fashioned and it's a little uncomfortable for me to hand my phone over to.
Oh, you'll never let go of your phone. You'll never let go of your
No,
credit
I
card,
understand that,
right?
but just
Yeah.
the I know there's a lot of information that can be transmitted in those ways. But what I really wanted to talk about is just something I read on the fact sheet that I think was important to highlight, and I'm just going to quote from that, if you don't
Sure.
mind. So, by carrying out spot checks to ensure that fare is collected, transit agencies can combat the perception that some individuals ride for free. Okay, so those are the words straight from the fact sheet, and I'm really kind of disturbed by them for a couple reasons. The first is that these fare inspectors are being hired at least in part for show and not for actual fare recoupment. So I don't really understand how much of this is going to be theater as opposed to actual work. So if the inspectors are doing this for the benefit of those who do pay, how much are they going to be encouraged, either subtly or explicitly, to single out those people who look the part or fit the profile of somebody who might be a fare evader? And then paradoxically, if we center the perceptions of those who might be offended that they paid for something that somebody else got for free, well, that implies that the T should really put more inspectors in the wealthier areas. So those riders, that they can be reassured that folks who don't belong are being kept out. And so I'm really concerned that many riders are going to be pushed away from accessing the system because they're afraid of being approached by someone enforcing their fare payment, particularly if they look like they're in the wrong neighborhood, if that makes sense. Because the demographics of those currently receiving fare evasion violations, I know, are disproportionately perceived as Black or Hispanic compared to the ridership of the MBTA as a whole. So I just want to make sure that the MBTA is going to make sure that the routes and the stations and the people, and I know you said this in the presentation, but those that are checked are not disproportionately Black, brown, low income, and that you have these equity metrics that you will be able to bring to the public to determine that the system isn't putting an undue burden on certain riders. And I know it's been a long time since I've been on a crowded bus during rush hour, but I do know that it can be hard, to get behind the driver, let alone all the way to the back of the bus. So I'm really skeptical of the T's ability to deploy inspectors on these crowded buses during peak hours, because that means more inspectors during off-peak times, right? And who rides the bus during the off-peak times? More of the ridership is shift workers or low income or people of color. And this isn't really being, paired with a means tested fare program, which I encourage you to do. But these low income workers are going to bear the brunt of that enforcement just by virtue of when the inspectors are deployed, not even where, right? So other issues, where are the fare vending machines going to be put? Where are they going to be equitably located? How much is it going to cost to maintain them? It's one thing to have a machine in your neighborhood, but it's another to have one that actually works. And I'm glad to hear that the handheld devices have the ability to tap into the system and see what's working and what's not. But lastly, I just want to say the benefits of all door boarding. I love it. I think it has great benefits, but the benefits of that using this new fare system are exactly the same operational benefits of a zero fare system. So at what point does the cost of making people feel like you're working really hard to collect every last fare exceed the benefit of this recovered revenue? I just want you to keep that in mind as you go through this. The cost of there is a cost of doing nothing, but at what point is it more worth doing nothing than implementing a overly complex system? So thank you so much for your time. This presentation has been very helpful, and I really appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. No, thank you for your comments. There was a bunch there, and I'm not going to be able to respond to all of them, but I think I caught a couple. And if I can just quickly give you some thoughts. I think the thinking about the perception comment there is really more about the idea of deterrence, right? That when you or I see people being checked regularly, that keeps us in a space of greater honesty. We know that the vast majority of people pay their fares, right? Like that is the statement, and so we're trying to solve a problem that is well, I wouldn't say on the margins, but we know, again, as I said, the majority pay. And so it is deterrence that we're seeking here, not in any way a perception that we are seeking out those who are fare evaders. In fact, if anything, we're trying to ensure through, as you said, some of our equity measures and equity checks that everybody has a relatively equal likelihood of being inspected based on their proportional ridership on the T. And I do just want you to know, in our negotiations with our system integrator, there are potential penalties when fare vending machines are not working. That is something we are very cognizant of, and that's important. That sales network is meaningless if it's non-functional, and so that is something that we are paying a lot of attention to, because as you mentioned, making sure that people have access both in their neighborhoods, but that it's working access is a really important piece. I don't know if there's anything more, Representative, you wanted to add there, but
no, that's very helpful, and I really appreciate the amount of thought that you're putting into this. But again, I do want to point out that even the time of day that you're checking for fares, has an impact on who gets checked. So,
of course,
and I'm sure you're thinking of that, and I want to make sure that when we take a look at this, we can tell who's being checked. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. And Representative, let me know when you want to talk about free bus, and we can have a lot longer conversation about it too. I would love to do that. Okay, looks like we have some more people with their hands raised. So I will, if I can ask, whoops, I'm sorry. I just am having some technical snafus. I don't need to open the chat. I need to unmute last name Jaffe.
Yes, that's me. A couple of things. I do like the fare design. I don't think a free system really is very effective. I myself am working on a microbus solution in the Charlestown area. And one of the things is that we need a fare system. And I've already spoken to you folks about integrating our fare solution with yours. And that was a few years ago. So I'm just curious, third party fare integration, is that still possible with your new system here?
Oh, Oh my goodness, you are getting ahead of us. But yes, in the future system. So we have, let's see.
2 years, by the way. Our
yeah.
implementation is happening in 2 years.
I'm going to encourage you to pop an email to our public engagement at mbta.com. It should be up on your site now, up on your screen. But in the future system, we are able to integrate our system integrator, or that payment platform, potentially with third parties. Absolutely, that is sort of one of the benefits of this system, and that you could see that we could actually really increase mobility options in the community, particularly if we've done a good job, as Representative Owens is going to keep us honest about having a good sales network and making sure that cash users can access a Charlie card. How do we make a Charlie card then be sort of a currency, for lack of a better word, to use other systems? So we are still a few years away from that design, and getting really deep on that, but that is one of the future benefits we hope to see, to really open up other, as you said, micro mobility options and other options to kind of integrate. And I would hope at the end of the day, we see greater access to mobility, particularly for those who are unbanked, who currently couldn't potentially use a micro transit option, a scooter, a bike, or some of those others, if you don't have access to credit. So is that helpful?
Yes, it is. But let me add 2 more things here. The second thing is transfers. Back in the day, we used to have a piece of paper that we could pass between a bus and the rapid transit. Is that going to be a potential possibility, either within the MBTA system alone or with us, the microbus solution that we're planning to put into place?
So I just want to make sure I understand. The question is we previously would have given you, in order to transfer between bus and rapid transit, you're asking about what are those sort of transfer rules going to look like? Is that the
Yes.
question? Yeah.
Yes.
Neely, are you on the line? Do you wanna help out as what we're thinking about for transfers? Go ahead.
So yes, the short answer is, as part of those integrations that Lindsay was describing earlier, we do plan on enabling things like best value fares between the MBTA and regional transit providers, and between micromobility services when we build all those integrations out. The idea is to have all that integrated and work on the same network, beyond just MBTA services being able to transfer between all of them.
Excellent. I look forward to seeing this solution. Very excited. We're moving fast.
Well, great. I look forward to another conversation. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And if I can unmute last name Wunsch.
Hi, how is my audio quality?
We
Pretty
got
good?
you. You're
Oh,
good.
excellent. This is actually tied a little bit into what Representative Owens was mentioning about the perception of fare payments. Particularly, I'm thinking back to my days when I went to BU and I would fight to get into the Green Line and go all the way to the back as quickly as possible, just to be a good citizen and make room for other people. But the question in my mind is, will the fare readers, the reader devices, which will be at all the doors, be active at all the doors? Because I'm now a little concerned that if part of the idea is to have people tap as they board, so that it's visible to others that people are tapping as they board. If, for example, the reader at the very back end of the Green Line car, where the door was not opening, if that's still active, people might get into the habit of just boarding through the open door, going all the way to the back, and then tapping, which, if I understand it, would be completely legal. But then they wouldn't be participating in that, the community validation that everyone's tapping. Do you have any comments or thoughts on that scenario?
Sure. Neela, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I can take the first part of on the technology side. Yes, the idea is that all the validators on Green Lines and buses would always be active. The validators are smart enough to know if they're, for example, in an underground station, so you don't get double charged if you went through a gate. That's a separate issue. I think to your point about some people maybe not seeing you tap if you're in the back door, there are still people there will still be people around you, and people will still see you get checked. So I think that it doesn't fully eliminate the benefit of having everyone tap, even if the validator that you tap at isn't necessarily the one that you first pass by when you enter the vehicle. I don't know if Lindsay wants to add anything to that.
No, I think you covered it, Neely. So, we don't as of yet anticipate any sort of policy that you have to tap at the closest reader or anything of that sort, but that you have to, tap as you get on. And then, yeah, is that helping answer your question? Okay, great. So let's see. I want to remind people they can raise their hands if they'd like to make any comments or send a chat to the moderator. Oh, I see a raised hand. Last name Wu.
Hello, just following on to Mr. Wush's comments. I think it's very important that everybody who, as they board a vehicle, at least above, other than in an underground station, as people board, that everybody taps in with no exceptions. And that includes even MBTA police, MBTA staffers who are on duty or off duty, cleaners working under contract for the MBTA. Everybody should tap in. This makes it very easy to see whether the policy is being enforced uniformly. And also, it's just very important so that the MBTA statistics on bodies' presence in the vehicle are up to date. So we don't get some crazy overcrowding like we used to get when the MBTA only deduced ridership from fare box receipts, which was not real time. It lagged considerably by weeks or months. And in fact, it was discovered in multiple places where fraud was occurring, where people were stealing in the counting houses from the fare boxes. And the MBTA had no independent way of knowing what the actual ridership was. They made the outrageous proposal, I remember in the 1970s, of cutting back the number 69 bus because of alleged falling ridership. Meanwhile, people were barely getting into the bus. And it was only when the city of Cambridge did its own independent audit with unmarked civilian people counting that the MBTA even bothered to look, and they found massive fraud, and they actually made several arrests. So I think it's very important just for real time and for accuracy, everybody taps in.
I hear you and I got it. Certainly being able to count riders and staff and those who are performing services for the MBTA is critically important. I think you will see significant improvements with our new system certainly over our current fare boxes, having everybody tap at all times.
Great. I think it's very important to have that real-time information to avoid, peak crowding or unknown crowding and being able to react immediately. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Thank you for joining us and thank you for the comment. Okay, I have a question in the chat. Can you explain how the device you mentioned will know whether it is a first or subsequent offense? And I wonder if anyone on our team would like to hop in and answer that. Hello again, Eli.
Yeah, so we made it an important principle to make sure that any site warnings or citations that we issue are issued to the individual who was caught violating the fare rather than to the potential owner of the piece of fare media, just in case it's a lost or stolen credential. So when we are collecting that person's information, our back office system is matching their information based on criteria like name, date of birth, or their government ID. That's stored in an encrypted database of people who have been cited in the past, so that we make sure we're always matching those records when we have that information. And that's all pulled live during the issuance process.
Thank you, Neely. I want to just remind people, if they want to add a comment, you can either send a chat to the moderator. You also can click the reaction and then the raised hand button, and I will do my best to unmute you. I see something coming down over the chat, but let me give that a minute. Okay. Oh, last name once. Oh, can you unmute?
There we go.
There you go. Okay.
Just looking for a quick recap of the commuter rail system, because I know that the intention is still to put readers at all platforms, like was done earlier this year or late last year on the Fairmount line. But I'm not clear on whether the interaction between the conductors, validators on board and the passengers is going to be 100% of the time like it is now, which is basically what every customer and each conductor interact 100% of every, at least once on every trip. Is that the intent, or would so the conductors are not going to go into a spot checking mode like the verifiers on bus and green line?
Yeah, I think from the rider's perspective that much of this will feel the same. If you're used to showing your M ticket and now you're instead showing your media, that they're sort of tapping. In fact, on some of our we've been piloting some verification type software on M ticket on a few of our lines, and so that will feel very similar. It will not really feel very different with conductors walking down the trains, or through their couple of cars that they're assigned after every stop. To make sure that people were able to tap at those platforms.
Okay. Well, part of my concern about that then is that I've heard it's a pretty constant thing that on pre-pandemic, it was pretty constant on many busy South Side lines in particular. Not so much North Side because it's reduced. It's lesser ridership, but there were just countless occasions when the train cars were so packed, the conductor just could not get through to collect fares. So I'm assuming that condition is still going to prevent them from validating in the way that it's hoped, that 100% interaction. I guess that's just a statement of a concern, and not, I guess I just wanted to put that out there.
No, I think I understand certainly crowding is important in any of these. We'd like to run a service where I live on the commuter rail network. I've been on very crowded commuter rail trains and understand those. Another piece, just as we move forward on fare transformation, is of course the installation at the north and south station and back bay gates as an additional backstop of sorts to make sure that folks have paid their fare before leaving our stations. And Anthony, I think maybe you might want to say a little more about some of the crowding pieces.
Thanks, Lindsay. I was just going to add on the piece about the commuter rail fare gates, and also mention that in the future, since folks will be required to tap at the platform validators before boarding the train, there is a bit more of a reason for folks to pay before they're board, versus currently if they're on a crowded train, for example, and they don't encounter the conductor, they would just be able to just say like, oh, okay, well, I would like to buy my ticket now. Versus in the future, if they hadn't paid to board the train, they're kind of there's greater consequences for not doing that. And so I think that there's a little bit more of a reason for folks to tap before boarding in the future.
Okay. And one final question, as far as manpower goes, it sounds like because the interaction between conductors and customers is going to be 100% as it is today, there's not going to be any potential for labor savings, because we're still going to need all the crew in the same numbers that we have now, right?
Right. There's no plan to change our particular head count around conductors, and I think there's also I'm not sure my safety department would want me saying that we could get rid of our conductors because they are, of course, are performing important roles should there be anything go wrong. So they have dual functions here, right?
Of course. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very
Thank you
much.
for the question. No problem. Okay, I have a question in the chat. Uh, does it make more sense to have checkers at the doors outside the bus, checking people as they disembark? Also, using metrics you already have and knowing the speed of checking, have a few teams present when the number of people to be checked is greater. Neely, I wonder if you could start us off with just the speed of checking and sort of how quick we hope that interaction will be, and then we'll move to the different ways that we could position sort of staff to do that.
Yeah, we do have pretty rigorous contract standards to make sure that any tap that occurs on during an inspection happens pretty quickly. We don't expect most inspections to take more than a little over half a second. And we do recognize that potentially in cases where there are lots of people on a vehicle during peak travel periods, it may make more sense to do inspections as people are disembarking. And we do have that ability on the device. We have built a way to inspect on a moving vehicle while also being able to inspect at a stationary location at a stopper station. So that is part of the plan that we're looking at.
Thank you, Neely. One of the things I can say is we have not ruled out the idea of inspecting people at stations or at bus stops, I should say, as people get on or off. Our concern is balancing that with equity in terms of which stops do we go to and how do we make sure that everyone is getting equal access. So we have begun work with our partners at the Central Transportation Planning Services to look at some equity in enforcement, and both having inspectors move through the system and sort of ride the system or stay at stops. And both of we will probably end up with some sort of hybrid model, and particularly as a way to mitigate some of the crowding on buses is one way. But that's certainly that has not been determined for sure. But these are some of the things that we are investigating, and I think we'll continue to look through or look at closely in design over the next couple of years. It looks like that same person maybe, or maybe a different person also commented, you can move your teams around based on the number they can process within a stop time using a random stop solution, similar to how lottery numbers are generated. Yeah, I think the randomness is what's important here, right? When it's crowded and it's busy, a concern that I have just at first blush is that we not just then go to the busy stops, but that we're not ignoring the less busy stops, right? And that we're assuming that fare evasion is something that potentially happens across our network. But important, and we also really want to be thoughtful that we don't impede operations in any way. It's one thing to inspect people when you're on the bus and moving through the bus, but we don't want to delay either boarding. The whole point of this is to make boarding easier and quicker, and cause delays on the other end now as you're disembarking. But that's an important piece for us to be considering thoughtfully as we go through the design and think about some of the pinch points in our system. Okay, I don't see any hands raised. So I'm going to encourage people one more time that they can drop any questions in the chat or raise their hand. I also want to recognize that it is almost 7 o'clock and you've spent an hour of your life with us. We appreciate it greatly. Feedback is so important to us. I know one person already asked about future transfer rules. We will be having outreach meetings in the month of May focused on our future fare rules. One of the benefits of moving to fare transformation is adding a lot more flexibility into how we think about fares and how we could be processing fares. Our current technology is outdated, and so we will be holding outreach meetings in the month of May. I'm not sure we published the dates just yet, but you can find out more about that online. Maybe someone could drop that into the chat so that they can easily click it if they haven't already. And then we welcome you to come to any of those. And I don't think I see any other comments. And so what I think I'm going to do is Thank you all for joining us this evening. As always, we really appreciate people spending their time with us and sharing their thoughts. Our email address is here, and that goes to a group of community outreach specialists. So we'll be certain to get back to you or direct your question to the best location we can find. We welcome you to join us at any future MBTA events. I and a couple members of the team will stay on for a few minutes in case anyone has any last minute questions, but otherwise I want to thank you all and particularly thank our interpreters for being with us this evening. Thank you, everybody, and good night.
I have a question. This is Michael. Hang on 1 minute. Oh, I want to pin you. 1 minute.
Can you pin him? I can pin him.
Yes.
There you go. Can you see him now, Sharon?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great.
Hello. I have a question that's related to the readers. That's going to be on the bus or the
Yep.
train. Well, primarily on the bus. When you tap to get in, how is a deaf or a blind person going to know? They won't be able to hear the beep. Is there going to be a light to indicate that it has been checked? So I'm questioning the tech. How can it have a visual mode and think about those who are deaf as well?
There is my friend Neela, who's going to answer the question.
Yeah, so we have thought a lot about accessibility when we were building all the devices for the system. So everything has color, light, sound, is tactile to the extent that it can be. So we try to make sure that people who may not have access to hearing or sight will still be able to use the system. We did extensive accessibility testing on each of the devices as well. So we had people come in and use them, tell us what could be improved, and made changes to the devices based on that. So we have thought about all of that.
Great. I'm happy to know that. Thank you very much.
Of course. Thank you. And I think at this point in time, I am going to let our interpreters and our staff be done for the night. Thank you everybody for joining us. Have a lovely evening. Please share any comments you have at our email, publicengagement@mbta.com. Take care, everybody. Good night.
Night.
Night. See you in a few weeks.